Hello, my name is Joseph Cabrera, and I did my policy brief project on the DACA Act. So, the American policy that is referred to as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which is very prevalent in the news, and I'm sure everybody has at least some recognition of, if not a whole lot of knowledge and familiarity. It basically entails a executive order on behalf of Obama in 2014, which stated that it gave a lot of illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants who were brought over before they had turned 18 temporary and conditional legal citizenship status. They did not have full-on citizenship, but it gave them certain benefits that were almost equivalent to being enjoyed by actual American citizens. They were able to apply for certain loans, not grants, but student loans. They were able to work. They were able to basically carve out a normal life, and then they would have to go to apply for renewal every 2 years. That's how long the DACA Act was originally intended to last for and be eligible. And then with Trump's inauguration, he had promised to completely eliminate the DACA Act, which he did to some degree, and it has been a hotbed of debate ever since, and it is currently being seen before the Supreme Court. So basically, in the Supreme Court debate, a lot of the rhetoric revolves around how presidential and how legal it was for him to just try and completely rescind the act, and how much disruption that would cause at various different establishment levels. And my act sort of evolves the conversation a little further and centers it around back what the original focus of the argument and desire for a conducive outcome was. So instead of getting caught up in all of the legalities and logistics, perhaps reining it in a little bit, there's been a lot of different acts proposed by Congress. The DREAM Act was the most popular. It was around long before DACA, and then it's been preceded by Succeed, the RAC, the Bridge Act, and they have all been voted down. And I noticed from the statistics that I saw, it was primarily due to congressional partisanship and a stalemate, rather than really attempting to pass through a logical and workable solution. It seems like everybody's sort of hunkering down into their own ideological camp and not really looking for any desirable outcome. And then meanwhile, the fate of the dreamers, or the people who had benefited from the DACA Act, hangs in the balance, and that entails over 800,000 citizens or temporary citizens. So some of the guidelines that were embedded into the policy for prior bills are that they must have been brought over before they were 18, must have been here for a certain number of years, must be gainfully employed or seeking employment, or enrolled in school to better themselves, or conscripted in the military, must have some sort of working history of a moral decency. And so what I proposed was the No Exodus Act, which is the new order for the elimination of xenophobic ostracism that is destabilizing the United States Act. And that basically takes a lot of what I perceived as being the most sound policies and provisions of temporary citizenship from the other bills, and keeping those while moving away from what I saw as Trump's sort of trump card move, or his little verbal distraction to hunker down on punitive measures toward the dreamers, when a lot of his immigration speech was vague, but it seemed to align more with wanting to reduce narco trafficking. And I saw in my research that 68% of illegal undocumented immigrants are from overstated visas, not border crossings. There is a heavy border crossing issue, and it also was being discussed a wall, which would be a huge expenditure and it would take a long time. So border security has said that that's not what they're looking for. They need more patrol agents. They're just overextended. And I think that moving away from that, that is a separate issue and has nothing to do with the Dreamers. And if we address the issue of the Dreamers as efficiently and quickly and thoughtfully as possible, then we can move on to issues such as those that Trump was mainly discussing in a circuitous way. So basically, I say in the policy brief that I propose, we have a 2-year time frame. That is our goal. It's not necessarily going to be thrown out if we do not reach it. But within 2 years, we would like to see all, if not most, of the Dreamers have their case closed. And they need to have a path towards citizenship, not just leave them in limbo where they can continually renew and take up a lot of our bureaucratic time as well as their time. I don't see this as being a way to generate productivity and income if we're constantly keeping them in this this sort of 3-ring legislative circus. And there is an argument that that will eventually lead or incentivize people to come over illegally and then leave their kids, or in some way it'll be lenient enough to where they can exploit the system. I say if there's anybody who's not meeting the standards of have been here and showing a completely unblemished criminal record or relatively unblemished criminal record according to whatever guidelines that are established, then they are promptly subject to deportation, or at least vulnerable to it. As well as we need to work on better visa tracking methods. And in those 2 years, it'll be a grace period for anybody who is undocumented, who or also is involved in some form or another in the DACA Act, to come forward, get a processing ID number, and that will put them in a place in line to go through the proper channels and gatekeepers to try and obtain permanent citizenship. And that will be, when it's undergoing that process, it will be determined on a case-by-case basis. Because, as it is being said in the Supreme Court, it was a large move on Obama's administration to bypass Congress in enacting the DACA Act, and it was the same doing in Trump to try and rescind it, and it would cause a lot of disruption for people who basically have lived their entire lives here and don't really have any particular stake in the country of their parents' origin. And to punish them for that in such a permanent, profound way would hurt more than it helps the home country, as well as it could also heighten international tensions, and it just completely disrupts a lot of different communities. And it just seems to be unconstitutional in the way that it would retroactively pursue litigation and even putting them through the criminal justice system and punishing them for crimes of the past. We're talking about years here. The average Dreamer is 25 years old. The oldest is 37. So they are not particularly young. Some of them have careers and are contributing to society. And I believe that we need to facilitate that progress and work to help them rather than get in their way and completely, colossally wedge this new checks and balances and prospect of severe punishment looming over their heads while they try and do the best that they can. So that is my proposed bill, the No Exodus Act. Thank you.